During the early hours of the 11th of December, 1862, the USS Signal, Marmora, and a tugboat were traveling downstream on the Yazoo River, approaching Drumsgold Bluff. The two paddle-wheelers were inspecting the draft of the river so that some of the Union ironclads could traverse down and support Union forces in the area. When the Marmora was within sight of Drumsgold Bluff, they recognized there was a new threat within the waters, and these were little floating wooden timbers, which were actually torpedoes. One of Marmora's crew used a musket to shoot one of the torpedoes, which resulted in it detonating. Now alerted to the dangers, the two paddle-wheelers carefully traversed the river, but Marmora came close to another torpedo, which resulted in it detonating, though Marmora was undamaged, but the close call scared the two paddle-wheelers, and they retreated back upstream and informed Captain Walk of the new threat. Walk was already acquainted with Confederate torpedoes, as he had encountered them off Fort Henry and Columbus. Up to this point in the war, though, the torpedo had proved very unreliable, and no kills had been scored on any Union warships using that weapon. It was clear that in order for any major Union warship advance to occur, the torpedoes would have to be cleared, so Captain Walk conferred with Captains Selfridge, Howell, and Walker on what actions should be taken. The men decided that Marmora and Signal would receive sharpshooters in order to shoot and destroy the mines in the river, and in order to protect these two paddle-wheelers, the light draft ironclads Cairo and Pittsburgh, along with the ram Queen of the West, would escort them. At 7:30 a.m. on the 12th of December, 1862, the 5 units got underway, with Marmora in the lead, followed by Signal, then Queen of the West, then Cairo, and finally Pittsburgh. The flotilla of ships would be under the command of Captain Selfridge aboard the USS Cairo, whom was a survivor of the sinking of the USS Cumberland on the 8th of March, 1862 from the Battle of Hampton Roads, and Cairo was his first time commanding an ironclad. At 10 a.m., the Cairo and Pittsburgh opened fire on a wooded area near Old River, which Confederate sharpshooters were known to have been in the previous day. After hammering the woods, the flotilla continued forward, and by 11 a.m. they were approaching the point where Chickasaw Bayou entered the Yazoo River. Here the Marmora captured Jonathan Williams and a slave, and when interrogating Jonathan Williams, he admitted to Marmora's officers that he was aware of the torpedoes in the river. Under the orders of Lieutenant Getty, John Williams was promptly arrested and thrown into irons. Lieutenant Getty also questioned the slave, whom stated that Williams was paid $500 for services in pulling off the torpedoes. The flotilla then continued up the river, and upon reaching a sharp bend, the Cairo lost sight of the Marmora, and suddenly musket fire was heard. Within a few moments of gunfire being heard, Captain Selfridge saw the stern of Marmora with its paddle wheel in reverse, and the vessel was stopped. Selfridge assumed that Marmora was taking fire from Confederate sharpshooters along the southern bank of the river, and so he closed the distance between Cairo and Marmora and opened fire with the starboard battery. After shelling the southern bank for a couple of minutes, Cairo caught up to the Marmora, and Selfridge hailed Lieutenant Getty. Getty replied, "Here is where the torpedoes are," and at this moment Selfridge recognized that the musket fire was not from the Confederates, but it was Marmora's crew shooting at the torpedoes. However, the torpedo they were shooting at was not exploding, and so Selfridge ordered the Marmora to prepare a cutter and investigate the object. Marmora then ran into issues with launching the cutter, and Selfridge, whom was becoming impatient, ordered one of the Cairo's lifeboats to be prepared and launched to investigate the object. When the Cairo launched its small boat, the issues with Marmora's cutter had been solved, and it was launched at the same time. Aboard the Marmora's cutter was Ensign Walter Fentress, whom pulled a line out of the water, and it was connected to one of the Confederate torpedoes. He promptly cut the copper wire that connected the torpedo to the shoreline, and he pulled the torpedo up on land. The Cairo small boat investigated the item that Marmora's crew was shooting at, and it was found to be the remnants of one of the torpedoes that had been detonated the previous day. Selfridge, whom was now highly irritated, ordered the flotilla to continue its course up the stream. Before the flotilla could get underway again at roughly 11:50 a.m., the big guns at Drumsgold Bluff opened fire at a distance of roughly 2.5 miles. Selfridge promptly ordered Cairo to proceed full speed ahead, and he also ordered the two 42-pounder rifle cannon in the bow to be prepared for action. At 11:55 a.m., just as Cairo was getting underway and its paddle wheel hadn't even revolved 12 times, the port bow had a geyser of water rush over it and the ship shuddered. Within 5 to 10 seconds, another large geyser of water rushed out from Cairo's starboard side amidships, and the ship shuddered once again. The explosion on the port bow was the devastating and tremendous one. It lifted the ship's bow, damaged the number 1 gun port, and damaged the central 32-pounder gun. 3 men were also moderately injured. Within an instant, a huge hole was ripped open in the ship's hull, and a large gush of water flooded the forward shell room. Captain Selfridge recognized what happened within an instant. Cairo had accidentally run into 2 of the Confederate torpedoes. Almost immediately after the explosions, Cairo's propulsion system lost power, and the ship was drifting forward, and without receiving orders, the pilot put the helm hard to starboard as he intended to run the vessel aground with the little bit of motion it had left. Initially, the other 4 ships in the flotilla did not recognize how badly damaged Cairo truly was until the forecastle began to submerge. First-class boy Yost, who was only 14 years old at the time, was manning his station at the starboard bow 42-pounder cannon when the torpedoes detonated. He would later write, "In 5 minutes, the forward part of the hold was full of water, and the forward part of the gun deck was flooded." Within a few minutes of the torpedoes detonating, Cairo's bow made contact with the right bank when facing upstream. As Cairo touched ground, a few of the crew jumped off with the hawser, and they connected the vessel to cottonwood in an attempt to prevent it from sliding back into deeper water and submerging. At this time, Captain Selfridge recognized the situation was hopeless, and he ordered the crew to abandon ship, and they began evacuating through the 3 remaining small boats or jumping off the bow onto the shore. By the time the Queen of the West pulled alongside Cairo to help with its evacuation, the gun ports on the bow were beginning to submerge. Roughly 8 to 10 minutes after the torpedoes detonated, Cairo began to slide back, and the immense pressure caused the hawser to separate, and the vessel began to drift into deeper water. Over the course of the next couple minutes, the ship would gracefully slip beneath the waves, and once it contacted the bottom of the river, all that was visible were the tops of the 2 funnels and its jackstaffs, with the rear jackstaff still having the stars and stripes. Just a mere 12 minutes after the first torpedo detonated, Cairo was gone. Miraculously and gratefully, not a single crew member was lost, and only 6 were injured, with none of them being serious. One of the Cairo small boats would remove the flag from the aftermost jackstaff, and then the Queen of the West would connect ropes to the funnels and jackstaffs and pull them down to conceal the location of the wreck so the Confederates could not recover any of the artillery. Following the sinking, Captain Selfridge fell under criticism, with one of the famous statements being, "On the 12th of December, Lieutenant Commander Selfridge of the Cairo found 2 torpedoes and removed them by placing his vessel over them." In the end, no one was specifically blamed for the event, as there were several errors that culminated in this disaster, but it is unique to history because it is the first time a warship was sunk by torpedoes. This largely neglected and underestimated weapon now had a new prominent role in naval warfare. With that having been said, there is nothing more to add on to this topic for today. So, if you have learned something new in this video, why not leave a like and a comment down below, and have a wonderful day.